All right, hello everybody. So this is going to be the third and probably the final, certainly for this set, the final third, the last third of this review of this book, First Invisible, Then Obvious. Well, it's not a review; it's just stepping you through it, and it's providing a summary. I wrote the book, so I'm not really the best person to discuss it, really, to review it. So these are the three chapters we're going to see today. The first one is speed and certainty. Then we're going to look at creativity and innovation. Creativity and innovation, I warn you, or I'm proud to announce to you that this is probably one of the most important aspects of forward playing there is. And the last one is sequence anchoring, and likewise it is one of these really groundbreaking aspects of forward playing. This is where we really get into areas which are not really touched by anybody else. So let's talk a little bit about speed, but before we do that, let's have a quick recap as to what we were trying to do. So for those who've not seen the first two videos on the book, forward playing is a determination. You reach a conclusion that it's better to understand, to think of the mind, the cognitive aspect of the mind, in terms of two separated centers, and they do different things. And the metaphor I had when I was preparing this book was this Lord of the Rings scene. I'm not a huge specialist of Lord of the Ring, but I think there's a scene where they walk past this cliff, and there's a gate, and you can't see the gate, and you've got to wait until the full moon is there, and then you can finally get through the gate, which appears through the rocks. And forward playing is very much this thing. It's always been there, and yet we don't see it. And the day you learn to step through it, you really are better off. And the reason why is because these two cognitive centers, they really fundamentally work very differently. I mean, they are almost night and days. I mean, there are bridges and interoperations between the two, but they are very, very different. So let's talk about speed for starters. So when it comes to talking and doing things and writing and operating in general, some people are faster than others. Now, this is where it comes into a forward playing kind of thing, because essentially that kind of speed that DJs, TV presenters and the others have, that is forward playing. These guys, either by temperament, by physiology, by nature, guys and girls, nature, or by practice, or by how they approach things, they generate arguments, discussion points, reactions, repartees, faster than other people. And it's quite, there's nothing, there's no magic to it, in the sense of it's pure preparation. It's like running fast or swimming fast or doing anything physiological fast. Well, you've just got to have the aptitude, the capability, and then you've got to train. Without training, talent is just a bad habit, as a French saying. So stand-up comedians, very strong forward-playing salespeople, TV presenters, leaders, some financial analysts and copywriters, some traders I've seen, very, very strong. And part of the reason for their speed, it always reminded me, there was a car company in France when I was a kid, and they had these ads about replacing people's car exhausts in 30 minutes. And they were all going, well, you come to us, and perhaps that was the days where metals were rusting faster, or cars were rusting faster. But anyway, their ads were saying, oh, we can replace your exhaust, your muffler in 30 minutes. And they used to say, because your exhaust muffler, we have it in stock. So I guess this was before the days of rapid deliveries, courier deliveries and the rest of it. So forward playing is like that. The reason why you can be fast is if you have it in stock. You see, if you don't have the part in stock, then it's you're not going to be. I mean, you're going to be able to make it up, but it's going to be slower. So this is where confidence, good education, broad education, but practice with a forward plane, and and again, just to remind you, just because you understand things. This is a mistake I've made, much of my young, education and young adult life, is that I just went I was told, well, you need to understand, and then you just need to learn. So I understood and I learned, but I never went past that. And it's the past that bit, which is the bit which is interesting, because that's the forward plane thing. So you can use the forward plane tools, lists, prose, process diagrams, whiteboards, mind maps, all these things that we've discussed before to improve speed. However, I want to start to introduce something we're going to touch on a little bit later, and we touch on to the second book a lot more, which is that there are certain reaction plates, if you want. There's certain reactions engines inside the cognitive centers, or underneath the cognitive centers to be precise, which will let you leverage that speed and step it up. So here I list an exercise which is a little bit counterintuitive, but essentially you write 3 lists of a given topic, maybe your work or whatever. Now this is completely counterintuitive, so the explanation is very, very abstract, and it's not really particularly relevant to this discussion anyway. But you write 5 things that could be as simple as that. It's completely random. This is not for sharing. This is not for keeping. This is not for being precise. This is purely it's the equivalent of weight training. So you're making motions which are meaningless apart from the fact that they work out the muscles. Okay, so that's all. It's a muscle working exercise like weight training, and you do 5 things that could be. It can be anything. I explained a bit more. Then you do 5 things that would be funny. So funny means a bit surprising, a bit which catches people. It doesn't have to be that funny. Again, this is weight training. This is, doesn't. And lastly, you do 5 things which cannot be, which are contrary to general logic. So if you look at the arrow here on I don't know if you can see my mouse here, perhaps. This is a general order of nature of the universe, if you want. So 5 things that could be forces you to have a bit of imagination, and it forces you to generate. Then 5 things that funny, well, they still work within the order of things, but they kind of jump a little bit. And then things that couldn't be is things that, well, you work against nature. Now when we do that, we just go deep in the muscles, deep in the matrix, and we trigger certain things. This, and then you chuck the piece of paper, and then you do it again the next day. When you do this, it can be a little bit tiring after a few days for various reasons, but it's a fantastic exercise for gaining speed. If you think you're a slow thinker, if ideas are not coming up to you, this is a great one to get into. It's a little bit special. There you go. So second key principle is that in terms of speeds, is that there's a certain ratio between backplane and forward plane. How much backplane, how much effort or forward plane does it take to deliver a backplane thing, and the ratio between the two is extremely high. It just never ceases to, even if though I'm quite used to it. I mean, it's not exactly 40, it can be 20, but it can be multiples of 40. So how much effort does it take to create a presentation compared to, which is going to last 15 minutes? Well, it's going to be 20 to 40 times. So it's going to be whatever it is. So for an hour presentation, you can more or less assume it's going to take you a week to prepare an hour presentation. Now, if you already have some of the material, maybe 20 hours, but to write a dissertation that can be read in 20 minutes or half an hour, it's going to take you, 4 or 5 days, and so on and so forth, to create a symphony, it takes about 20 years to train a teacher which is able to teach kids for one topic for an entire year. Do you see what I mean? It's that's roughly the thing. So when you do a PhD thesis, it can be more, and so on and so forth. So there's this ratio of how much forward plane effort is required. Okay, so and I think this is highly relevant in the context of work. So because to create a document takes time, and to create a system takes time, and to create a product takes time, and so on. So selling and convincing. What is this? Oh yes, well this is a lot like one of these things. Is I worked in Switzerland for a commodity companies, and it was very, very complicated business landscape, and I was focusing on the gaps and the rest of it, but as a result, my presentations were unconvincing, and we didn't really get the project, and then a little bit later, a few months later, I think, I came across this thing from Jordan Belfort. So this is not really forward plane, but it's such an important part of self-development, and it's one element that you mustn't forget, that I put it here. But it has to be attributed to Jordan Belfort, who is famous and notorious, depending on how you want to look at it, for being the guy who's who was portrayed in The Wolf of Wall Street. Yes, and what he's saying is essentially selling is a transfer of emotion, and in particular selling is a transfer of certainty, and certainty goes from high to low. So if you won't be able to sell if you're low certainty. You can only sell if you're high certainty, and you can enthuse and communicate with other people these things, and this is what this is in reference to, and there's a difference between confidence and certainty. Is that confidence is kind of like pretend certainty in a sense. So this is what this is about. Okay, so now we get into something a little bit more. We're going to start talking about creativity and innovation. Now, this is a huge topic, and it's particularly relevant nowadays because, innovation is a key part of economic life and the rest of it. So here I give an example from Intel of some marvelous piece of innovation, and it's not innovation in the way you might think you are. So the first thing we're trying to say here is that forward plane is kind of like the medium of creativity, of innovation and the rest of it, and essentially what we're saying is forward plane is not the source of there's a difference. See, forward plane is not the source of innovation, but it's where it happens really. So by definition, innovation, if the innovation comes from a given person, if it comes from you, then it's got to come from your forward plane, because it's generational. This is axiomatic. So it means you can't feel it. It means it's tentative. It means it's but for a new idea, a new concept, and bear in mind that a new concept, for innovation to be innovation and creativity to be creativity, the concept only needs to be new to you. It might not be new on the planet. That, in a sense, physiologically, that doesn't matter, if you see what I mean. So it's not so much whether it's an innovation from the point of view of, well, no one's ever thought of it, but from the point of view of you came up with it yourself. Okay, and the way ideas come up is particularly interesting, because if it's something you're generating, so you've got to generate something which is new, so it cannot be backplane. You see, if it is backplane, it's something you understand comes from the outside. It's no use or whatever. But also, it needs to go from not being conscious to being conscious. At one point you go, aha, you've got this eureka moment. You see the Archimedes moment, where the new idea comes on. So how does that all work? You know, what's the model for that, and how do you use it? Well, you see, so here I've got quite a few examples. I'm not too sure what it's doing. Okay. So there's a lake in Scotland called Loch Maree, and I think it's the 4th largest Scottish lake, and it's very different from Loch Ness. Loch Ness is very, very deep. It's because it's between two slabs of rocks. I think Loch Ness is, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of it's hundreds of meters deep or something like that. You know, it's quite deep. But Loch Maree is quite different. So it's got these it's got all these little islands floating around the surface, and they're covered in pine trees and all that. And then, but you've also got some islands which are submerged. And what you can imagine is that if the water level were to go up or go down, then some islands would become submerged, or on the contrary, other islands would emerge if the water was going down, whatever. So this is a little bit how forward plane ideas come into consciousness, is that they need to break through the surface, so the question is, well, how did they get generated in the first place? So see, because we said forward plane is the medium of creativity, but it's not the engine, and the engine is something which sits underneath, and this is actually a big part of the second book, but it's this is how it is. So you've got these engines which are under the surface, if you want, and by doing forward plane exercises, we start to seed these things and we reinforce them. And if you're part of the reasons why you need to be in a quiet environment, or you need to be able to concentrate to have innovation, is because, well, if the consciousness threshold is too high, then you can't pick up these signals. Do you see what I mean? So the water in your Lake Maree is too high. Now, if you bring it down and there's something growing underneath, and to grow the thing underneath, it's got to be forward plane. You can't do it by understanding. Now, sometimes this is what's ironic, is that sometimes you will see artists or others who and this engine underneath, I'm stepping back a bit here, but this little engine underneath is a randomness engine. Okay, and when I mean it's a randomness engine, I mean it's a randomness engine. It is a random generator. That's all it does, and you need to trigger it. You need to you will do better from triggering it and from exploiting it. So I give techniques with that, but these techniques are very related to the exercise, the speed exercise we saw above, you see, because there are not so many different types of components in this lot anyway. And this is how you get these things. Now, what triggers this randomness engine? Well, this randomness engine is a contrarian engine. That's essentially what it is. So when people say, necessity is a mother of all invention, well, that's exactly what it is, because essentially you start triggering the randomness engine, and then new things start coming up. But also, necessity is going to make people, they're going to start becoming more proactive. So again, you're in forward plane. So the whole architecture of innovation and creativity, if you want, is this randomness engine. It's lowering, keeping the consciousness threshold relatively low, at least for a short time, and doing forward plane steps. And that's it. Now, it needs to be done in a context and for a given purpose and the rest of it. But this is what it is. So the alternative is, when people don't know that, well, they they sit around and go like, I'm waiting for ideas, and the ideas don't come up, and then they don't know what to do. They don't know the forward plane reinforcement steps and the rest of it. So what they do is they start to throw random things on canvas, and then hopefully some shape will happen, or they do random noises, or so instead of and all they're doing is, instead of using an internal randomness engine, then they use an external one, nature, just whatever. So, which is fine. I mean, I'm not prejudging, but I'm just saying it's always the same thing essentially. So if you throw random oil on canvas, or smash, eggshells on or whatever, then you're using an external randomness engine, and then your backplane and to kind of like get to where you want. But you can also do it the internal way, and then get equally better results. So this there's no but. This is what it is. It's really this is really powerful stuff. So there's a great tool, certainly for concepts. I don't know so much about things like aesthetics and artistics and sounds and tastes and all that, but I'm sure it can be adapted. But this contrarian circle is something where you put in a non-structured way you list the concepts and the notions and the themes and the bits of information that you want. And this is a fantastic tool. This is of tremendous importance, and particularly here on the left is some things that you don't want. So it's similar to the speed exercise of things that can't work. It's you go and needle a little bit, you go and twig the internal architecture, and this can bring great results. Talk about writing and the rest of it. Okay. So now we get to the next big one. Okay, this is on par with creativity, because it's you're going to see what it does. So as I said, I was trained in the normal way that you go to school and you go. I did engineering, so I was told, you need to understand, you need to learn. So I was understanding, I was learning, I was understanding, and all that. And there was a time when I wanted to build some kind of like fitness monitor, because there was certain things I wanted to do based on the heart rate, but a little bit different. And but I didn't know enough about electronics to really build it. So I thought, I'm going to learn about this electronics things. So there's in those days, and there still is, there's a book called The Art of Electronics, which is an amazing book. It's a beautiful book. It's very heavy. It's quite pricey. I think it's about £60 or £70 these days. So it's not negligible. It's an inch and a half thick, and hardcover, and it's really interesting, very well written. It is the best, definitely one of the better books around. And I went, I'm going to learn electronics. So in the morning I was taking the tube to go to my job in London, and then so I was slicing the chapters of the book and then reading them in the train on the way to work and back, and the rest of it. And so I bought two of these books, because one which I was keeping at home intact and as a reference, and the other one which was slicing, which was my material for learning during the commute. And guess what happened? Well, it never worked. It just didn't work. And then you just go like, surely you've got the information, you're learning, you're clever, you're motivated. I was really putting some woods behind the arrow, to be honest. I was full into that. So what happened? Well, what happened is that electronics is a little bit different to information, in a sense of this is where it starts to get a little bit abstract, but really important. Not all material is suitable for backplane to forward plane transfer. You see, so if you look at information, you can, as I often say, information has a shape, and information can be either like dumb facts, or it can be dynamic kind of structures. Okay, it can be like more complex and the rest of it. So dumb facts, you can pick them up from the back plane and then kind of convert them into forward plane, and then that will just about be fine. But for complex dynamic things, well, it actually doesn't work, because you need to build them in the forward plane, and then you need to rest the forward plane learning upon the forward plane learning. So when I was learning things by reading them in the tube, these complex things, well, yes, I was learning to recognize them, but I was not learning to integrate them. I was not building the forward plane at any time with that. And as a result, each layer I was adding was like building a scaffold, but in the wrong direction, if that makes any sense. And because essentially we don't really know how to learn. All we know how to do is how to bring things in front of our mind, and then hopefully the mind will pick it up, and then pick it up in the right way and the rest of it. So essentially, dumb data, what this chapter is about is saying, well, dumb data, you can convey it like flat data if you want, static stuff, like how many player in the team or who won the World Cup or whatever. You just go like, okay, well, that you can convert it. The backplane to convert to forward plane transfer is fairly easy. You can pass on that information. But this is our model a little bit. But when things so there are some dynamic kind of like data situations which are backplane, and that's pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is great biological things where, well, we learn to join the dots and we pick up on pattern because the things happen again, and it's a great survival skills and whatever. But the thing is with pattern recognition is that it's mostly backplane. But then when you get into dynamic processes, the only way you can fundamentally learn dynamic processes, such as finance, such as engineering, such as, I'm sure, some aspects of medicine, such as some aspects of law, such as some aspects of accounting, such as learning to speak a language, is that you can't learn it through the backplane, because it becomes a dead end, because you need to build these forward plane sequences, because this is dynamic. So you can't. Backplane is not dynamic. It's only forward plane that's dynamic in a sense, and because it's something you generate yourself. You say, well, if this and this and this and this happens, so essentially, and this is really, really significant. Imagine children or whatever who don't learn to who do not have the techniques to learn to structure dynamic thoughts. Well, they're going to be hampered in their education and potentially in their career prospects, because they do not build on these sequences, so this is where you get into this things of, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you, because if something, and this sounds like quite aggressive and a little bit scathing, and it is, but essentially there are certain things that no one else, like learning a language or learning a musical instrument or learning certain things about economics or law or philosophy or anything that, or computing, finance, that you've got to do the spade work yourself. You've got to build the sequences yourself. Each person needs to go through it, because and there is no alternative. And as I said, so here I take the example of some issue with the amount of energy in a cloud or something like that. So essentially, part of what's separating us in societies nowadays is that there are so many complex matters that unless people start to understand how to learn them and how to step through their own sequence anchoring, and they need to take the time, and there needs to be the framework and the rest of it. But unless this is done, and it's not going to happen. Mathematics is a great way, and then here I mentioned very briefly, I pick up these topics and really drive them home in the second book. But part of the reason why devices are digital devices are a problem is because they, yes, they bring information, but they, do they always do the forward plane building? Now, for some people it might happen, others not. But these are the themes we're discussing here. So you can see. So we can come to the end now. So this forward plane business, with the way information is differentiated between static and dynamic and sequence anchoring, is really fundamental to understanding and having a way to deal with some of the challenges of the modern world. Now, if you look at there were some periods in the past where people really had to step through and started to consider the world around them, societies, economies, the overall environment, the universe, so to speak, philosophy, and I think we're at one of these ages again that we need to have these discussions and find solutions and step forward. And I hope there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that forward plane, if someone's got a better name for it, that's fine, so be it. It's not particularly important. But essentially, once you start looking at the world in terms of forward plane, then that gate, the Lord of the Ring hidden gate in the rock, starts to open, and then you can really start your adventure. So this is the end of this sessions, the end of first invisible, then obvious, and yes, I think the book cover should be showing, and it's not, but never mind. There you go. So I hope you got something out of this situation. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you hopefully on the next book, which is even wilder, to be honest. But that's another topic. Bye bye.